On a two-lane road in West Milford, New Jersey, there's a stretch of asphalt that state troopers have nicknamed the Gauntlet. Locals call it something else. They call it Clinton Road, and after sunset, most of them won't drive it alone. It's 10 miles long. It cuts through dense forest with no street lights, no gas stations, no cell service for long stretches. And for over half a century, people have been telling the same stories about it. Stories about a phantom boy who appears near a bridge, about a lake where a body was allegedly dumped and never found, about cars that stall for no mechanical reason at the exact same mile marker. That's just the first location. New Jersey, the most densely populated state in the country, wedged between two major cities, covered in strip malls and suburbs, has 11 places where the ordinary rules seem to stop applying. Places locals grew up being warned about. Places where the legends didn't come from nowhere. They came from something. This is the story of those places, why they became what they are, and what actually happened to earn them their reputations. If you've ever wondered why a state this crowded still has pockets of genuine dread, stick around, because the answers get stranger the deeper you go. And if you want more of these deep dives, subscribing helps more than you'd think, since it's how this channel decides what to dig into next. New Jersey's darkness didn't start with ghost stories. It started with geography. More than 1 million acres of the state are covered by the Pine Barrens, a dense, sandy, largely uninhabited forest that has swallowed roads, towns, and people since the colonial era. Long before smartphones, before highways, this was where you went if you didn't want to be found. Iron workers, bootleggers, and fugitives used the Pine Barrens as a hideout for 2 centuries. The soil is too acidic for most farming. The trees grow strange and stunted. GPS still fails in parts of it today. It's also home to the state's most famous legend, the Jersey Devil. The story dates back to the 1700s, a supposed 13th child born deformed, cursed, and driven into the pines, where it's said to roam still. In January 1909, over the course of a single week, thousands of residents across South Jersey reported strange hoofprints in the snow, livestock deaths, and sightings of a winged creature. Newspapers ran daily updates. Schools closed. Factories gave workers the day off out of fear. It became known as Phenomenal Week, and to this day, no one has offered a full explanation for what triggered it. That's the pattern you'll see across this list. It's never just folklore. There's almost always a real event underneath it, a disappearance, a disaster, a documented case file, and the legend grew on top of it like moss on a gravestone. Take Shades of Death Road in Warren County. The name alone stops people, but it wasn't invented for a horror movie. It's a real, official road name that's existed since at least the 1800s. Historians have offered a few competing origins. A series of unsolved murders in the 1920s, deadly malaria outbreaks tied to the swamps that once bordered the road, even a headless corpse found hanging from a tree, according to local county records. No single explanation has ever been confirmed as the definitive one. That ambiguity is part of what keeps it alive. When you drive it today, it's just trees and farmland. But ask anyone in Warren County what happens if your car breaks down there after dark, and the mood in the room changes. Then there's the Blue Hole, tucked inside the Pine Barrens near Winslow Township. It looks almost impossibly clear, a perfect blue circle of water in the middle of brown, tannin-stained forest streams. Locals have spent generations trying to explain that color and trying to explain why it never seems to warm up, even in August. Some say it's spring-fed from deep underground. Others insist it's bottomless, though state park surveys have measured its actual depth at a fraction of the legend. The gap between what's measured and what's believed is where the fear lives. For a while, all of this felt containable. A scary road here, a strange pond there. New Jersey residents treated these places the way you'd treat a neighborhood with one bad block. You knew where not to go, and everywhere else was fine. That began to change once these places stopped being separate stories and started being connected. In the early 20th century, New Jersey built some of the largest psychiatric institutions in the country, designed to house tens of thousands of patients at a time. Ancora Psychiatric Hospital, opened in 1932 in Winslow Township, was one of them. At its peak, it held thousands of patients in conditions that later state investigations described as severely overcrowded and under-resourced. Parts of the original campus were abandoned as the facility downsized through the late 20th century, leaving decaying wards standing empty for decades before being partially demolished. Trespassers who broke into the abandoned buildings before demolition described the same things over and over. Patient records still scattered on the floor, gurneys left in hallways, personal belongings never collected. It wasn't a haunted house built for effect. It was a real institution's real decline, left to rot in plain sight, and that visible decay did more to frighten people than any invented ghost story could. That's the turning point for this entire list. New Jersey's creepiest places aren't creepy because someone dressed them up to be. They're creepy because something real happened, and then no one cleaned it up, physically or in memory. Once you start looking at the state through that lens, more locations start to line up. The Spy House in Port Monmouth, officially the Seabrook Wilson House, dates back to the 1600s and is one of the oldest surviving structures on the Jersey Shore. During the Revolutionary War, it's believed British spies used the property to monitor colonial troop movements across Raritan Bay, which is how it earned its name. For decades it operated as a museum, and staff and visitors reported cold spots, unexplained sounds, and objects moved between rooms. The museum eventually closed, and the house has sat vacant and increasingly weathered ever since, watching the bay it once watched for spies. Devil's Tower in Alpine is a different kind of unsettling, not decayed, but deliberately hidden. Built in 1917 by a wealthy widow reportedly grieving a personal loss, the 60-foot stone tower sits on private land inside a nature preserve along the Palisades. It's fenced off, mostly obscured by trees, and almost impossible to see unless you know exactly where to look. That secrecy is what feeds the legend. Stories of a suicide tied to its construction, of the tower being sealed off entirely, of hikers who've stumbled onto it by accident and immediately felt like they weren't supposed to. In Clifton, storm drains along the Erie-Lackawanna rail line have been nicknamed the Gates of Hell by generations of local teenagers, tied to rumors of a cult that supposedly used the tunnels for rituals in the 1980s. There's no verified police record confirming organized cult activity there, but there are real graffiti markings, real reports of trespassing arrests, and a real tunnel system that runs for miles under the city, which is more than enough to keep the story circulating decade after decade. And in Tatowa, a stretch known locally as Annie's Road carries one of the state's most repeated ghost stories. A girl killed in a car accident decades ago, said to appear on foggy nights near the site. No official record has ever named an Annie tied to a fatal crash at that specific location, and that's an important distinction. This is one of several New Jersey legends where the story outpaced the paperwork. What's real is that the road has a documented history of serious accidents due to poor sight lines, which likely gave the myth its foothold in the first place. By now, the pattern should be clear, and this is where it stops being coincidence. Every location on this list sits at the intersection of the same two things: a real, documented event and a landscape that swallowed the evidence. A forest with no cell service. An asylum with no funding to demolish itself properly. A road with genuinely poor visibility. A tower deliberately hidden from view. New Jersey didn't manufacture its fear. It just failed to clean up after its history, and the woods did the rest. The Burlington County Prison Museum in Mount Holly makes that connection almost literal. Designed in 1810 by Robert Mills, the same architect who later designed the Washington Monument, it operated as a working prison for over 150 years until 1965. County records confirm at least one execution took place within its walls. When it closed, instead of being torn down, it was converted directly into a museum, meaning the actual cells, the actual gallows framework, and the actual booking room are still standing, unaltered, open to the public. There was no renovation to soften it. You're not looking at a recreation. You're standing in the original room. That's what separates New Jersey's list from generic ghost story content. Almost nothing here had to be invented. It just had to be left alone. Today, most of these places exist in a strange limbo. Clinton Road is a functioning public road that thousands of commuters use daily, alongside the paranormal tourists who show up specifically to be scared. Ancora's remaining structures have been partially demolished, but portions of the original campus still operate as a treatment facility, meaning the line between the institution's past and its present is only a few hundred yards wide. The Spy House sits vacant, its future undecided, its history irreplaceable. The Pine Barrens are still there, still largely unmapped in parts, still capable of disorienting even experienced hikers using nothing but modern GPS. If you're keeping a mental list of which one you'd actually visit, drop it in the comments. That's usually where the real debates start, and liking the video helps push these deep dives to more people who'd want to see it too. So why does a state this developed, this populated, this thoroughly mapped, still hold onto 11 places that unsettle the people who live closest to them? Part of the answer is economic. Demolishing a Gothic-era asylum campus, fully remediating a historic prison, or draining and resurveying a spring-fed pond costs money that state and county budgets have repeatedly chosen not to spend. It's often cheaper to fence a property off and let it decay quietly than to erase it completely. That decision, made in budget meetings, not horror scripts, is what leaves these places standing in their most unsettling, half-finished state. Part of the answer is psychological. Humans don't fear the fully unknown as much as we fear the almost known. A documented murder with no confirmed motive, a girl's name with no matching death certificate, a lake whose real depth doesn't match the legend but is still deep enough to unsettle. Thanks for watching our video. Also like and subscribe to help us grow. Thank you.